Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. We're going to be doing a translucent ocean wave painting today. So I'm going to go ahead and list the colors that I'm using for this, and I'll put them in the description box. I'm going to speed the first part of this up, and I'm just grabbing some light blue violet, cerulean blue, and white for the sky. I'm using a 1-inch flat brush for this part. It's just a little bit of a sky, not much is going to be showing, so I'm just using a 1-inch flat brush to apply it, and it is slightly damp. I'm going to go ahead and start blocking in the ocean wave, and I'm using a photo reference, and I did link it in the description box, but as you can see I have it up on the screen so you guys can kind of get a general idea where we're working towards. I'm taking a little bit of the titanium white, and I'm just going to start by blocking in the bottom part of the wave. We're going to be doing a lot of blending from each color to the next, because that's what's going to give you a really nice smooth look to your ocean wave. And then when we add in the bright white sparkles on the wave, it's going to make it look like almost a glass effect. I can't get enough of painting water lately, just the way that the light hits it, and like, you know, with wave paintings, I just love putting light sources shining through the wave. It's something that I really love to paint, so I've been doing a lot of them lately. So I'm gonna go ahead and start mixing up a darker gray color. So I'm taking light blue violet, a touch of Payne's gray, and I'm gonna just keep working that in until I can get the color that I'm going for. It's about the color that you want to start off with. I'm just going to go ahead and start by blocking in my main shapes, and then I'll go through and detail them out and start kind of blending them together better. But you really want to study the reference photo. The way that I got this wave to look so glassy looking is by making sure that I was trying to capture all those little details of the different shapes within the wave. Those are basically the reflections in the wave, and that's what's going to make it look like it's almost glassy. So I'm just gonna continue taking that grayish blue color, and I'm gonna start mapping out where I have the darker parts of the wave on the left side with that gray blue color, and I'm just gonna keep trying to pop that in where I can see it. You really want to try to focus on getting these shapes that you're putting in the wave. You want to make sure that they're flowing in the direction of the wave. So as you can see, like right in this area, the patterns are starting to slope downwards more. They're not as straight as the shapes down below. You can see the what looks like it's going to be somewhat of a titanium white down in the front part. Those are just straight lines pretty much across the canvas. I pretty much just break everything down into shapes. That's the easiest way for me to make sense of everything. And as I'm putting in these gray tones, I'm using somewhat of a variation in the gray, because if you look up close to the picture, you can kind of see that it's not just all one color gray. There is some variation amongst those shapes right there. I'm going to go ahead and now start on the brown parts of the wave. So I've got my raw sienna, burnt umber, and the burnt sienna. And I'm kind of taking a combination of all of those and just, I'm not over mixing my colors. It's important that you don't over mix. Just trying to get a good base layer down and try to map out at the same time a little bit of where these colors are going to go. pretty much just burnt umber on my brush right now, and I'm trying to darken up this area. This is like right underneath the wave, so that dark area that is underneath the curling part of the wave is a shadow from the wave curling over. So you want to make sure that you're getting your values right, because that also is going to help you achieve the look that you're going for in this painting. And if you get up real close and look, you can see that there's like some really really weird patterns going on like in the wave, which really drew me to this photo anyhow. But it's all the different crazy reflections bouncing off of it. And so what I'm doing is I'm just taking a variation of the titanium white and raw sienna, and as you can see, I didn't overmix it, and that's going to work in your benefit because you're gonna have like a marbled effect on your brush from not overmixing your colors. So when you like squiggle it on like I did, you're gonna get that showing through. So don't overmix your colors as you're doing this. And then you can see that there's darker parts. So I'm just taking my raw umber, or I'm sorry, my burnt umber, and I'm trying to kind of bring those out as much as I can while the paint is still wet in this area. You don't want to overwork it because you don't want to lose the pattern that you're able to obtain. You want to keep those crazy looking patterns in the painting. Here in this area, it's darker as well. That's another shadow area from the wave, the tip of the wave. So I'm taking a little bit of burnt umber and black. I'm just gonna try to darken up this area a little bit. Since I get a little bit ahead of myself and I try to get paint down on the canvas and also get all the details in right away, and it's sometimes comes back to bite me in the butt because I have to keep going back and, you know, redefining everything anyway. So I try not to get ahead of myself, but you know, sometimes I just get so excited that I just want to get in there and, you know, paint all the cool details that I see. But really what you want to do is just, like I said, make sure you're just getting a basic color, like, you know, looking at the picture, your reference photo, and trying to get those basic colors down and shapes down first before you detail them out. I'm gonna go ahead and start mixing up a lighter color to put down kind of where the gray area is on the left side of the wave. That real pretty, almost looks like silver. So for that, I'm gonna go ahead and take white, and I'm gonna use a little bit of the light blue violet, and a little bit of titanium white. So you just want kind of like a really light color. Don't get it completely white, but you want it light enough so that there's a good contrast between those colors. I'm just going to try to kind of weave this through the gray area where you can kind of see it in the picture. And as you're applying these, make sure you're kind of blending the edges out a little bit. So right through this area, you can kind of see how it starts to come up a little bit more within the shape of the wave as it starts curling over. So I'm going to make sure that I'm, of course, going in the shape of the wave. So all of these layers are gonna show through, and it's just gonna add to the effect. So don't get hung up on, you know, feeling like if you're messing up and you're painting over it, it will benefit you. So there's no need to worry. You know, acrylic is so forgiving, and you can really just pretty much mess up anything and fix it. And that's why I like acrylic. It's a very forgiving medium. I'm gonna go ahead and start bringing up this darker brown. I'm using the burnt umber, and I'm just trying to put in the darker areas that I can see, because we do have some dark areas right along the edges of the white part coming down here, or the lighter part that we put in. So I'm taking a little bit of that brown that I have left over and kind of mixing it in with the light blue violet color we have, which is, it gave me almost like a rose gold color. I really liked it, and so I just kind of went with that because that was kind of similar to some of the colors that I saw in that area. Now I'm gonna go ahead and switch to my small round brush. It's like more of a medium-sized round brush, but I'm gonna use this to pop in this brown color that we have right like in the middle of the wave, right before it starts to curl over. You can see that like random brown area. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to fit this in, and I'm making sure that the edges of the shape is pretty defined, so I'm not going to over blend this. I'm just going to go ahead and make sure I've got a nice defined edge, and I'm making sure that I'm outlining it slightly, because if you zoom in on that picture, you can see that the edge is somewhat outlined kind of in a darker color. So I'm taking a little bit of burnt umber, and I have Payne's gray on my brush too, and I'm just kind of zigzagging it along. I'm not making sure there's a smooth line, because also when you zoom in you can see that it's kind of like a jaggedy line. Got this little area too. Just go ahead and try to put that in there, and make sure you're using a smaller, you're switching to a smaller detail brush. So I'm going to go ahead and darken this area up underneath the curling part of the wave. So I'm taking Payne's gray, burnt umber, a little bit of black, and I'm just kind of zigzagging it across, like kind of going in the shape that we had before. I'm just putting it in right above that area that we have the lighter part. So I've got just straight raw sienna, and I'm trying to incorporate that because there's some brighter parts, and that's a really bright, pretty, earthy tone. And right when I saw this picture, I instantly thought of just raw sienna, which is one of my favorite colors to paint with. I use it a lot for different things. A lot of people ask me like where I get my inspiration from, and a lot of my inspiration comes from nature in general, just like everything around me. You know, I get these like instant thoughts of, you know, how I could paint this, or what colors I could use to paint that, or, you know, what's the steps that I would take to paint something like this. So normally what sparks my attention is like a certain effect that I see within a photo or just nature in general. And I had this photo saved for a little while, and I really loved the glassy look on the water and the colors. I loved the colors. So before I start painting, and I kind of have an idea of like what I'm gonna paint, and if I'm using a photo reference, I always sit for a few days and just stare at it. And that's going to help you a lot in your paintings if you are trying to achieve, like, you know, a lot of realism in your paintings. It's really going to help to just sit there and literally stare at the photo and just think of how you would, you know, what colors you could use, what colors do you see in it, you know, the process in which you would paint the different layers on. So those are all things that I think about for a couple days before I even start a painting, and it does help me tremendously. So, you know, try doing that also if you're wanting to achieve realism, and, you know, especially if you're trying to use a photo reference. I'm going to go ahead and start putting more of this. It's almost more purple in this area as it starts curling over the wave. So I'm using a little bit more of the light blue violet. So light blue violet, Payne's gray white. I ended up putting that same color over in that area, but I didn't like it. After I stepped back and looked at it, it just looked too dark. So I do go over this a little bit later once it's a little drier. That's another thing that helps me is, like, you know, you wouldn't really think about it, but taking pictures throughout the process of your painting, it helps you see it from a different perspective. I don't know why. I know it sounds really strange, but next time you're painting something and you can't exactly see like how it's coming along or if it looks good, always take a picture of it and then look at it on your phone. I don't know why that works, but it does, trust me. So try it out and see if that helps you. And then also stepping back further, you know, making sure that you're viewing it from afar just to kind of get the whole picture and see it from a distance, because that will help you too. So I'm taking almost white. I added a little bit of white into that mixture with the blue, violet, and the white, but I lightened it up quite a bit. And I'm just kind of outlining certain areas that I see that are lighter. But don't overdo it with your lights. I know this looks light right now, but it's not the brightest white. We are going to use the brightest white for the little sparkles on the wave at the end. So make sure that you reserve that for the very end. Take the flat brush that I have, it's very clean, making sure it's cleaned off really well, and I'm just literally swiping down. I'm cleaning it off after each swipe. That same purple color that I used for the very purple area right here, and I'm gonna go ahead and start kind of lining this part. So I'm gonna start putting in the rolling wave. Now obviously you can see some of that paint isn't dry yet from underneath, so I'm grabbing that in with the rest of the paint that I'm using on my brush, and that's okay. That'll help you, so it's not a bad thing. Use that to your advantage. because you want some color variation. This back part up just a little bit, because you can see that back part of the rolling wave is that darker purple color. And start putting in the lighter area. So I'm taking titanium white and I'm just kind of wiggling my brush back and forth, as you can see, because if you look close up there, it's kind of all random little shapes and things like that, but I see a lot of titanium white, and you don't want to go full on white because, like I said, there's little tiny sparkles right on the end of that, the tip of that wave. Grab a bunch of that titanium white, and I'm just going to go ahead and take my brush and kind of wiggle it back and forth again. Just keep working at it. Now I'm going to take burnt umber and I'm going to just outline the area right here. So you've got some darker parts right underneath this wave. So I'm grabbing some black and with that mixture, bringing that up through this part as well. So I'm grabbing a little bit of the titanium white, and I've got a little bit of raw sienna, and I'm just taking my brush and wiggling it up and down. And I'm kind of dragging down some areas in the middle. I've got a pretty light color on my brush, but it's still not completely white. And I'm just kind of taking my smaller round brush and twisting down this edge so it kind of looks like a little bit of foam. So I'm taking a little bit of the Payne's Gray, Blue Violet, and I'm pulling it down. Grabbing more white into that mixture. I'm going to go back through and do the same thing. Just until I get the color that I want. I'm going to make sure that this part is, you can still see some variation in the colors, but it's somewhat more blended because this part is kind of like in fast motion as it's curling over. So you do want to have it be kind of more blended in this area. So I'm grabbing Payne's Gray and White, and I'm just going to fill in this area right here, because I'm just going to have this area eventually be mostly foam. So I wanted kind of a darker color right here. So I'm taking a little bit of white. I'm trying to reincorporate some more highlights. So I'm just trying to pull out some more darker tones in the brown area, because you can see it's pretty defined right in the bottom part. So I'm just going to go ahead and start bringing that out a little more. So I'm switching to my flat brush because I just felt like it gave me more cleaner of a line. So I'm going to start using that for this area. And then I'll go back through because I still didn't get the lines straight enough, or, you know, even enough, I guess. So I did go back through and take my lighter color that I have that kind of overlaps that brown, which is mostly titanium white. I do end up taking that and going back through it anyhow, just to redefine everything. So I'm going to start working on the little highlight areas, and you can see, like, in between, if you zoom up on the picture, you can see that the little sparkles are almost like in between those layers of the water. So really study that. You don't want them all over the place. You want to be kind of sporadic with it. And I'm using straight white. And I am using a smaller detail brush. You want something small. And as I'm applying the sparkly parts, I'm kind of like taking my brush and my finger and kind of just like blending the edges out, because it'll make it look sparkly. If you just like swipe it a little bit, it'll look like there's a little light beam shining off of each little area, or, you know, off of the little sparkle glowing in the sun. And then right in the middle, go back through and take just your white paint and put it in the middle again after you do that. So just touch it with the white and then take your finger or a brush, if you don't like to use your finger, and just kind of like swipe the edges out so it looks like it's kind of glowing. And then take your brush again and put it right in the middle of it with just a glob of white paint. And you can see that it's all the way up through this area. So I'm even gonna put it right around the edge, because if you zoom in also on this area, you can see that it's almost highlighted with little areas of white. Now I'm not doing the entire thing, but just here and there. If you do it all, it's not going to stand out. And after I got a closer look, I realized that this area was also kind of highlighted with some lighter tones. So I'm taking my brush and I'm going over this purple part, but I'm blending it out as I do it with my fingers, so there's kind of like a shine. You don't want like a harsh white line, but you just want it to kind of like blend in seamlessly. I'm gonna go ahead and start lightening this area up. I've got a touch of light blue violet mixed with white, and I'm just going through and trying to blend out these harsh lines that I see. It was just really dark in this area, so I just want to go ahead and try to blend it out a little bit. And as I'm blending it, I'm just lightly taking my brush and gliding it over the top. So I'm switching back to my small round brush, taking a little bit of raw sienna, and I'm sorry, that's not raw sienna, that's burnt sienna. Burnt sienna and Payne's gray. It's gonna make that rose gold color again that we had earlier, and I'm gonna go ahead and start putting that in because I see a lot of that in the front of that wave. So I'm gonna go ahead and start kind of just popping that in where I see it. So I walked away from the canvas and let it dry for a little bit, and I'm coming back through, and now I'm gonna start putting very bright parts on this front part of the wave. And I'm doing the same thing that I was explaining earlier, where I just dab it with my brush and swipe it either up or down, or you can do both ways so it really looks like it's sparkling. And then I take my white and I put a nice white dot right in the middle of that area. And I'm kind of doing it sporadically. I'm not glomming it on like all down this area because then it wouldn't stand out. You want your whites to be next to something somewhat darker so it shines bright. See, there's even some sparkles going down the middle part of the curling wave, so I'm gonna add some more down in this area. So I'm gonna go ahead and start working on the splashy area. So I'm taking some Payne's gray, some burnt sienna, white, till I get the color that I want. It needs to be a little bit lighter. Taking more white, and I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm taking my brush and I'm just gonna be scumbling it along, almost like if you're doing clouds. Having a touch more of the burnt sienna. I wanted a little bit less gray and more of a tan tone to it. But I just took a little bit of that raw sienna too. So with the whitewash, like the foamy part splashing, I'm blotting it on with my brush and then tapping it with my finger. And then I'm going to go back through and put some highlighted areas on it. So I want kind of like a shadow area. You can see where the foam is on the picture. You can see like to the left of the foam, there's a little bit of a shadow from the foam. So I want to darken up that mixture that I made for the foam. So again, working with the Payne's Gray, burnt sienna, so you get like a nice shadow color. I'm just gonna go through and start kind of outlining that foamy area we put in. So I'm gonna pick up a little bit more white on my brush because I want to kind of outline the foamy part that we put in, because it's gonna make it look more 3D, and you just want a little bit more brightness in there. You don't want it to be flat. You want it to look, like I said, 3D. So make sure that you're gradually working up your bright colors, so that way you can just layer it on all the dark areas and it'll eventually pop out. And I'm even taking it down here because there's some whitewash underneath that wave hitting the bottom part of the water. So I didn't really put too much detail in this area, just a little bit of foam. I'm just going to take my black and burnt sienna, and I'm going to put that right underneath that foamy area we just put in, just for a little bit of a shadow. A 3-inch flat brush, and I'm dipping it in water, and then I'm dipping it in white paint, and then I'm kind of dabbing it on a towel slightly, and I'm gonna start splattering some paint on in the area of the foam. up somewhat of the color that I used earlier, which was like almost a silvery color. So light blue, violet, white, and I used a touch of the cerulean blue this time. Not a lot, but just a tiny, tiny bit. You literally want just a very, very light grayish blue, almost silver color. So I'm taking the flat brush, and you can see that really bright part in the middle there that's like woven between the gray and brown part. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in, and that'll be pretty much the final detail. So I'm using an angled flat brush for this, and you can use a flat brush. I like to use my angled flat brush as well. I'm just doing little touch-ups here and there, and I'm taking some more of that lighter gray color and kind of outlining this area that we put in with the dark purple. that about sums it up for this one. I hope that you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed painting it. So hopefully you guys try this one out. Thank you so much as always for watching, and if you haven't subscribed, please make sure to do so. And also don't forget to hit that notification bell to be alerted of upcoming future videos.